Awesome. All right. So I'd like to introduce our speaker for today, which is Coach Bob. Coach Bob is a visionary entrepreneur, EOS implementer, and coach whose passion is really helping people to realize what matters most, clarify who they are, and follow their North Star. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about that today, Unscatter the Chatter. All right. He's published 3 books. He has one coming out in the spring and another one in the hopper, if you can believe that. All right, take it away, Coach Bob.
Thank you, Tiffany. Hello, everyone. So Unscatter the Chatter. This is our book, which is about I Matter, our life operating system. And it is, as Tiffany mentioned, also helps people to realize what matters most, clarify who they are, and follow their North Star. And as we were coming up with a title for it, we did a little focus group with other visionaries, and people are like, well, the issue is people are scattered and people are all over the place. And that's often what is discussed when people say, what is a visionary? Well, they're scattered is often used. And so to talk about chatter, chatter is what's going on. There's so much information coming at us from social media, government, other parents, our kids, our parents. And so there's a lot of distractions. And then we've got the internal chatter, which is probably even a bigger deal. So that's our ego. That's that voice in our head, which often is negative. How come I didn't do this? What about that? So with the outside chatter and the inside chatter, it's easy to be scattered. So what we talk about is to unscatter the chatter. And I'll get into that in a second. My 2-minute story that's relevant to this topic is in Christmas of 1998, with family, standing around the island, and everyone's got drinks and there's a football game on and Christmas music and everyone's relaxed and having fun. And I'm in the middle of growing our business out of control. This is before I put in an operating system, and it was just nervous about cash and over promising to clients and not delivering and people issues and literally shaking and with a drip of sweat coming down, going, boy, if anyone else had this much pressure and stress, they couldn't even be here, let alone be present. And I realized I wasn't being present. And I had this aha, which was kind of the beginning of I Matter, where I said, okay, yeah, this is stress for sure, but real stress, what if I was a single parent and I had a sick child and I was working 2 jobs or whatever it might be and wondering, where's my next meal coming from? What about this? And I just had this epiphany that it's like, okay, yeah, I had stress and pressure, but it wasn't life-threatening. And I decided that I'm not gonna let stress deter me from having a great life. Sounds good. Fast forward about 1.5 years and putting systems in place and walking into on a Tuesday morning to my beautiful dream house. And I had season tickets to this and I was doing that and everything was wonderful. And I pretty much achieved everything I thought I needed to be happy. As soon as I have these things, then I'll be happy. And walked into my dream house and looked at the new couch that was being put in the great room, which I wasn't allowed to sit in because I might spill on it. This was a previous marriage. And then also the last piece of artwork going up on the wall. And I looked and I felt the sense of emptiness. And it's like, there's gotta be more. And that's where it's like, okay, I'm on a journey here, whether it's spirituality, whether it's a purpose, whatever it might be. So I'll come back to that. So 3 ahas I want to share about Unscatter the Chatter. One is that verbiage reflects consciousness. So what I'm saying often is reflecting what's going on in here. And so if I'm like, oh, what's going to happen next? Then I probably have doubt and not that faith and confidence. And so there's a voice going on in our heads, which might be, what's that goofy shirt he's wearing? Why doesn't he slow down? When do we have happy hour? But there is a voice going on inside of our heads. And so why not be a part of that conversation? And why not shift that conversation to more positive and affirming to, am I a good visionary? Am I a good father? To, I am. And to really state that with confidence and knowing. So it's a bit of fake it till we make it, that as I shift my verbiage to positive, that also helps to shift my soul and my heart to being positive and affirming and confident. So that's the first aha, is verbiage reflects consciousness. And we'll share these ahas and takeaways after I'm done talking. The second aha is welcome to the wisdom age. And we live in a time now, we had the age of agriculture, then we had industrial age, then technology. We're breaking through the ceiling, or not. We are hitting the ceiling of breaking into a new age. And as we've gone through these ages, there's been, communicating one-to-one, and then for the industrial age, communicating one-to-many. With technology, it's many-to-many, and there's some chatter for you. And so the wisdom age is about what's real for me, what matters most, who am I? And Dr. Bill Isaacs, who I had the great fortune of studying with for a few different sessions, he wrote a book called Dialogue, and his definition of dialogue is the art of learning together. So I have my opinions, my experiences, you have yours, and if we have in a safe space, I can share and speak out, think out loud, and say, maybe I don't believe that, or what do you think about that, without judgment, and we learn together. So we may not convince each other, but that's the wisdom age, is what's my wisdom here? What's tapping into something greater than myself? And as visionaries, that is our superpower, as Mary Tautimas said about a month ago, that we have a connection to something greater. I think everyone does, but I think we have a unique ability for that. So to tap into our wisdom, and that's what's going to get us through this next age. And I think it's the greatest time ever to be alive. Yeah, it's a little scary, a little nutty, but that is our role, our opportunity as visionaries, is to lead by example, to say, here's what I know is true, and what is true for you? What is your vision? How can you realize that in business and in life? The third aha is, who is the greatest relationship in our lives? And so I'm glad to say, when I asked that question, a lot of people answer it, but it used to be, our spouse or our kids or whatever. The greatest relationship is with ourselves. Now, yes, it might be something greater than ourselves, and that's very cool, but the greatest physical relationship, and it's ultimately with ourselves. So if I don't like myself, if I'm not nice to myself, that's not cool. That's not a great life. So ultimately, the aha is to practice on how to have a great relationship with others, so I can improve my relationship with myself. And that is spending time with myself, being nicer with myself, and I'll have a couple takeaways to help that. So to really think about that, how is my relationship with me? So 3 takeaways I want to share on how to move forward on unscattering the chatter is, first is to commit. So when I commit, and as a visionary, often I'm committing to 100 things. No, what are a couple things that I commit to, that these are things that I'm not going to stray away from. And so it's to know and act like I matter. And too often I'm trying to please everyone else. I'm not pleasing myself. I'm not doing the things, I'm not taking care of me, mind, body, and spirit. So to act like I matter, commit to being happy. If I'm not committed to being happy, I'll settle for not being happy and being scattered and being frustrated. So to commit to be happy is raising that bar to say, this is what happy looks like to me, that I'm healthy, I have great friends, my kids are awesome, I've got a business that's adding huge value. So commitment to be happy, and then commitment to being a visionary, and being a brilliant visionary, being an enlightened visionary. So commitment is the first takeaway. Make a commitment. What do you stand for? The second is I time. And we call I time is, we talk about fanatically scheduling I time. And this, for me as a visionary, I need and thrive when I have 90 minutes. For me, it's Monday morning, 6 a.m. I'm in that crazy thought where I'm not thinking about the to-dos or the urgent things. And so to have either, with me, it's the whiteboard. And then I use a tool, which we'll share, called the Take 5 check-in. And so I ask myself 8 questions, write it down on the board. And so I'm just thinking about what's going on in my head, tapping into what's going on with my emotions and my heart, and then writing it down, and then I share it. And how I share it is I do an audio just on my Apple phone, the audio, where then I share that with my integrator, with my wife, with a few other key people. But the most important person I'm sharing with is with myself. So when I hear myself saying, here are some things that I'm either frustrated about or dreading or celebrating or opportunities, what I'm grateful for. And when I hear myself thinking, and I'm not judging because I love myself and I am supporting myself, it's amazing. I was like, you know what? That really isn't a frustration. That's an old story. And then, wow, this is an opportunity. Stephen Kotler, author, wrote Stealing Fire, talks about when we are in the creative part of our brain. And that's when my I time is I'm not thinking about to-dos. I'm not looking at my computer or phone. I am elevating my mind to a higher spirit, to the important things, to tapping into something greater. And Stephen Kotler talks about that it creates these endorphins and helps us to be as much as 500 times as productive. So when I take time and say, I don't have time for I time and for me time, it's like, no, I matter. My mind, my heart, my spirit really matters. So fanatically scheduling time for that and then having a safe space to share that, that's the second takeaway. The third is to live your legacy now. And this is where I'll tap into the end of my story here. For some of you that know, on August 3rd, I had a stroke. And so literally was paralyzed on the left half of my body. And it was figuratively at my knees. I used to think I was invincible. And I think the reality is we may all die at some point, which kind of sucks, but let's live life now. And as I was in the ambulance, and whether it was God or whatever, I had a conversation and said, so is this it? You know, am I never going to see my kids again? Am I not going to see my wife? Am I not going to fulfill my legacy? And I got a resounding, no, this isn't it. You're not dying. I was like, yes. All right, cool. Then I said, is it because I'm here to teach something and still keep teaching? And it was like, no, not really. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Then why am I still here? And it was because you have so much to learn. And it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? It's like, yeah, you're teaching stuff, but the way to teach it is to live it. So to live my legacy now, be me. And that's where I have conviction to say, I'm not done. This was a new lease on life. And so literally got out of the hospital in a couple of days. Fortunately, my wife took care of me holistically, which helped. And just had the conviction to say, you know, my self-mastery, my purpose, my purpose is to elevate the entrepreneurial spirit through self-mastery and connection. And so that's for my whole life. It's with you all, I'm learning with my kids, whatever. And to elevate the entrepreneurial spirit is to create change, not react to it. Creative thinking, critical thinking, and just, you know, ingenuity, self-responsibility. And then it's also to be in the moment, impact everything around us. And then connection is this. Connection is community, you know, peer groups of great people that we're hanging with. We're being vulnerable together, safe space where we can be vulnerable and share. And then it's inspiration. I get so inspired by all of you to say, that is awesome. What else can I do? And how can I help you? And that's part of the community. So just to sum it up, it's, you know, life is too short. I call 2022 is the year of the visionary. The visionary is the cause of and cure of all of life's problems. And it's it's a role that is often misunderstood, including ourselves. And it's not just a role in our business, it's a role in life. So I'm honored to be a visionary. I'm honored to share with all of you. You know, we're very committed to the Visionary Forum. How can we grow it? We've got the summit, we've got the mountain, and it's learning and growing together. So to summarize and to conclude is, I am alive. I'm having a fucking ball with my life. I'm making a huge difference and I'm happy. And so I'm happy to be here with you and love to continue the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So we have some time for Q&A. So does anybody have any questions, ahas, topics to discuss out of that? I can't see everyone. Hold on. Here we go.
I can go. I can share.
Oh, fantastic.
Hey, Bob. Hey, Bob.
Hey, Emily.
Great job.
Thank you.
It's been a week for me, and I found myself really going into like some self-doubt, and like you and I spoke earlier this week, and that really helped me keep my head in the right space. But I just think like so much this year in particular that I learned how much it matters what we tell ourselves and what we think about ourselves. And like, as a leader, that for me, I've learned like that is, I have to keep my head on straight is like the number one thing that I need to do as a leader. So your talk was really timely for me.
Thank you. And it's not to ignore those emotions, you know, as we talked about, but it's to deal with them and then to come back to our team with confidence. Yeah. I mean, even in my marriage, my wife trusts me and loves me, but if I'm not confident, it's kind of scary, but yeah, absolutely. Right. And to have this space to share, it's like, oh my God, we are fucked, or what's going on with this? But then when we hear it, it's like, okay, maybe it's not that bad. But no, thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you really encouraged me this week, and I meant to text you, and I was just too overwhelmed with other stuff.
Honored to support. Appreciate that.
Walt,
what's up?
I just thank you so much, because it's so great to be part of this group of freaks called visionaries. We all know about that voice in our head that we get up in the morning. I have a really high functioning daughter who has some of this language in her head, and I look forward to the walk. She finally got home from school yesterday, and we have this voice in our head, and I think the big takeaway for me is it's okay to have a conversation with this voice in your head, with this person. You're talking to yourself, and somehow figure out how to write it down and go, that's crazy thinking, man. Shut the fuck up. That's stupid thinking. You're doing great, And then your story about, the single parent and all this type of stuff. Sometimes we just need to look around and go, wow, all that negativity needs to be balanced with some positivity. So thank you. We all, I'm looking at the screen. We all share this like head trash, So thanks. Cool, man.
Thank you.
we certainly do. Becky, did you raise your hand earlier?
It's just so interesting how things align. I was at a Vistage meeting yesterday, and the speaker was talking about the book Conscious Leadership. I don't know if anybody's ever read it. And the idea was about, oh, Bob, you would love it. It's like you wrote it. But she was talking about above and below the line. And what I wanted to hear from you about, Bob, the below the line stuff is maybe when I'm thinking something that I wouldn't say out loud because for whatever reason. And how have you worked, or how do you quell those things when maybe whatever part of our brain is producing thoughts that just really don't need to be even said in a safe space?
Well, it's interesting because the Take 5 has 8 questions, and it starts with frustrations. The next one's dreads, then MIs, so that's tapping into the voice in our head and what is that language, and then ahas, and then we flip it to a positive. And a lot of people say, why do we want to focus on the negative? I'm like, no, we don't want to focus on it, but let's at least acknowledge it, put a name to it, and then do share it either with a confidant or with ourselves. And so I believe it's okay to acknowledge it. Now, like Emily said, we may not run around and tell the whole world. It's like, oh my God, I think I'm going to run out of cash. But to just, to acknowledge it. And then there's a great book I think I mentioned called Letting Go. When I acknowledge that I'm scared or angry or whatever that emotion is, if I acknowledge it and accept it, I evolve to that next emotion, which is a more positive emotion. And so I think it's okay to admit it in a confidential group. Again, I don't want to tell my kids that, oh my God, my biggest client is going to leave me. And they're probably not going to leave me. So I don't know if that answers your question, that don't ignore it. So I grew up in a family where we are the happy family. Everything's great, so it's, well, yeah, why would you be frustrated? You have a great life. And I do that with my kids. But if my daughter is frustrated, I don't, just to say, get over it. You got a great life. I'm not acknowledging that anger, fear, or frustration. So I don't know if that addresses it, that it's okay to acknowledge it. But again, as a leader, people look to us to be confident. So I used to just say, everything's great. And I pretended it was, even though inside I didn't feel that. So to have a safe space to share it, I think is key.
Well, and one thing I just wanted to add, Bob, is just I have not had that near-death experience that you've had. So I'm very fascinated to understand your journey around that. And maybe that's another talk at someday. But it seems to me, my words, not yours, that I don't know, there was some sort of epiphany around that. And do you feel like that has brought out the better Bob, the more rushed Bob, the more patient? Like what are the positives that come from that?
Absolutely. And so it's interesting, and there's a lot of things going on. There's different ways to tap into your soul and whatnot. And one of the ways is a near life experience. And I've been saying for years, don't wait for the heart attack or the divorce or your kids to grow up or the stroke. But it's also like when we go to the mountain and I'm focused on me and everyone's focused on them and their spirit, and we're elevating our minds and expanding our impact, we have those epiphanies and whatnot. So I don't think it takes a near-death experience. I think that was a blessing for me. But again, even just sharing and admitting and celebrating life, I think we can expedite it without almost dying. And while we will be sharing the Take 5, Lily will send that after. Right. All right, any other questions before we break out? Yes, Allie.
Yeah, Bob, that was great. I loved your point about live your legacy now. And, you teach by living it. Those were excellent. And I'm wondering, this sounds like an amazing clarity break for us visionaries, is to get a legal pad and kind of journal on how we can live our legacy now. And I'm wondering if there were, a couple questions that would get us going in that direction, that, how do we live our legacy now? And some other questions that would prompt us to, be creative and have some action steps.
So there's a great book coming out in April called Unscatter the Chatter. Now, so I'll share a few of the questions, and then we could talk more about this in the forum. And that's where, like in the summit, that's where we go deep. We go to the mountain, and not saying we have to go there. But Lily, let's make a note. We'll send a couple questions out that have helped me. Oh yeah, here's the book. Thank you. And that's not me on the mountain, but it's going to be. But yeah, so that's a great question. And again, that's where we're sharing it. When I share some of these things with my brother or whatever, and they're not in that same mind frame, it's a one-way conversation. So again, with other visionaries the next book is ultimately going to be the enlightened visionary. Not that I'm totally enlightened, but I've had glimpses of it, and that's my goal. And so that's where other people who are seeking enlightenment and asking these questions. So we'll share a couple questions over the next couple days with the group. Donna.
Yeah, I put my comment in the chat. Everything, all the things you said, all the things, right? Just awesome. But I have a question for you around when you said that during your near-death experience, rather, that you were told that or felt that you had more to learn. Have you figured out what the more to learn is, or how are you managing the more to learn?
And maybe I wasn't clear. It wasn't that I have to go seek something else. It's what I'm already teaching. And so when I have conversations with you all, and I ask the question, why are you on Earth? What are you here for? And people are like, whoa, what is that? And usually people have a clue around that. And so again, this is a 20-year journey for me so far, and it's just beginning. That it's by I Matter stuff, and it's getting into our soul and realizing what matters most. So for me, it was what I'm teaching. I call that craft, is we're teaching what we need and want to learn. So it wasn't I got to go to the mountain to figure out what's what. It's just to tap in and walk the talk. I talk a great game, but it is kind of blah, blah, blah. And so now it's like, hey, look at, not even look what I'm doing. This is what I am doing. And if you choose to ask questions or whatever, so I don't know what it is for everyone. For me, that was the answer I got, is to teach what I'm here to learn, but mainly by being the example and walking the talk.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, I know we got to go to forum, but any other final thoughts or questions?
So Bob, what I heard you say is that you had not a near-death experience, but a new life experience.
Thank you. I love that. Right. And thank you. I'm sorry. Anything else? Because I do have a comment to that. Yeah, it's interesting because someone said, "Oh, you cheated death," and I'm like, "No, I didn't cheat it. It is a new lease on life kind of thing." And then I don't know if anyone's ever heard of Night of the Dark Soul. And so if I'm not feeling well and I'm overwhelmed and I wake up in the middle of the night and it's like, oh my God, what's going on? Why am I here? So since then, it's been Night of the Light Soul, so I don't get mad when I wake up in the middle of the night anymore. It's like, oh, cool, I'm tapping in, and that's that magic and whatnot. So yeah, I appreciate it. It's a new life. Yep. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.